Hi, I'm Gary Page. I'm a veteran, Air Force veteran from the Vietnam service time. I am a member of the Homefront Strong as a volunteer. I started out as a volunteer telling stories. I'm now a board member trying to seek out funding. And I'm here to tell my story, my military personal story on how I grew up and lived through the military and my family life.
It says here you have a very large family, Gary.
Yes. I'm a member of 8 siblings. My oldest brother and myself are the only 2 that served. We were both in the Air Force. But before getting to that, we did grow up in Sterling, Mass in the early 50s. We moved to Hubbardston, Mass in 57 or 58 and bought a big colonial 3-story house. Lived there for my entire life until I was 17 when I graduated. And when I graduated, it was definitely Vietnam time. It was 1968. And because we had a big family and finances were tight, college was a problem. So my mother says, go into service. Your brother's already in it. And I said, oh, great. So I did. I actually lived with my brother in Maine for a little while before they finally recruited, and worked at Howard Johnson's. And then time for recruitment and swearing in and all, I went through that, and it turns out that I had 2 classmates going in at the same time. We flew down together. We spent the same time with basic training. Had a rough time there because I had a condition called butterfly syndrome, and I was nervous and crazy and uptight all the time, and all I could say was yes sir, no sir. But we made it through 4 weeks in Lackland Air Force Base in Texas. I went to Chanute, Illinois, Chanute Air Base for training. That was a 6-month stay on mechanics, primarily pneumatic and hydraulic, technical work for aircraft. Graduated from that after 6 months. Was assigned, with all the assignments requested, I ended up with Northern Maine, Warren Air Force Base, Maine. That was a real treat. And because I was in the aircraft fighter squadron, 27th Fighter Intercept Squadron, the ADC, Air Defense Command, had me in there pretty tight, along with the National Defense Team, and that's where I stayed. My tour. We had the flight of F-106s that were a very good airplane back then. They were considered the first Mark 1 jets. Actually could fly Mark 2. This is what an F-106 looks like being armed for qualification. They had 2 IRs, 2 heat seekers, and 1 500-pounder, I believe it was. And they'd have 1 bird that they used as enemy. Shortly after my arrival, I learned of a crash at F-106. But this crashed before my assignment, and it was total pilot error. He couldn't eject because the seat in the cockpit would not eject. So he crash landed. He was still in the cockpit alive, but the jet was total wreck, and they grounded the squadron for 30 days to find out what their problems were. Unlike the story that I heard fantastic stories of, that the pilot went into a flat spin, was able to eject and get out, and gave the parachute department case of beer. It was false. Anyways, we had good times. There was a time when we had to do qualifications in Tyndall Air Force Base in Florida. We did it twice. This was pilot and squad qualifications for quick turnaround response. And I know before that we won a top squadron award. That's why we were called the oldest best. And we did that twice from Maine to Florida. And of course, I'm going down there perfectly white, sheet white, and coming back perfectly red. Summer. But it was a good thing to do, and that was just about 3 years there. There was reports of chasing flying saucers, but they were unidentified flying objects at that time, and they're more bleeps. But if you buy this book like I did, you'll find history from the 40s all the way through the early 70s of UFO reports that were in the Air Force Blue Book, then were classified, has been declassified and written by a retired Air Force colonel. It's very unique. It's it's 700 pages of reading. And there is one section in there that shows Loring Air Force Base as a site for a UFO chased by a T-33, which is a training aircraft and what we call the leaky bucket, because it leaks like a sieve. Nothing you could do. So that's what we had on the UFOs. It is interesting reading. There's, like I said, 700 pages, a lot of places. While I was in my last year, I actually met my wife. We actually got married just before Thanksgiving, and some of my family members, they come up for the wedding service, and it just happened to have a nice blizzard the day before and the night before, so they all had fun getting out there. And of course, we didn't have cell phones, so my wife was seriously late to the service, and we're all frantic knowing where she was while she was out shopping with her sister. So we got through it. She was actually with me for, I think it was 7 months before my discharge. 2 months before I was discharged, she was pregnant. So we went through the process of getting out because the 27th, well, a year ago, the 27th was reassigned to be a fighter squadron in Florida. We became the 83rd, which was another good squadron. Kept the same birds, did that same routine, and then they decided to reassign the 83rd and close that portion of activation for that base, which was Loring Air Force Base. So we all had the opportunities to be reassigned or take early outs. And because family had desires of me working for my brother, I get out, pregnant wife and all. Didn't know too much about the changeover with being pregnant and all that, and found out that we didn't have coverage for pregnancy, and we were on a waiting list. So that was something that was missing in my exit interview. At that point, we lived our lives. I had a long career in the wire industry, both ferrous and non-ferrous, which is steel and insulated wire. My civilian life again was a long life of having two kids, one of which we lost, a long career in the wire industry. And when I left, I was actually in the ferrous wire industry, which is a local company in Palmer, Mass. And it was a good career. Now I'm trying to enjoy retirement, which is always tough for everybody, but we're getting there.
Who else in your family was in the military?
My older brother was in. He went in 2 years prior to myself going in. He was stationed in Florida for training. He ended up at Topsham Air Station in Brunswick, Maine. And that's where I stayed with him before I was finally recruited. And consequently, he was still in Topsham Air Station while I was assigned to Loring Air Force Base in northern Maine. So we were able to contact each other on times when he was on duty and I was on duty. We could use the red line for that. And well, 2 years before I got out, they decided to close Topsham Air Station because we actually had an air station in Limestone, Maine. So he got out, he was gone, and I was the only one in at the time in Loring. He has 4 of his sons. He's got 6 kids as well. He's got 4 sons, all went through military. Eddie was in the Northwest Marines. Greg was a Navy and Marines pilot. Now he pilots JetBlue. Maddie's he was in, I believe, the Navy. Adam, yes, I think he's still in. He's an Air Force pilot, but I'm not sure if he's still in or not. I couldn't get the info. Then there was me with my story, and that was it for siblings that were actually in the military. The rest of them, because of Vietnam, they kind of drifted away from military. The draft was pretty much over. At that point, they all either attended school or went on to other. My father, which I didn't show, I'll show now. He was the first, him and his brother were both in. His brother, Clarence, was in the Army Air Force, okay, stationed in the Philippines. And my father, who wanted to be a naval officer, spent a little time on a ship. Him and one other shipmate were both Protestant at the time. The rest of them were all Catholics, and somehow they managed to tease them to the point where they resigned their commissions and moved on. My father ended up in the Merchant Marines. The disappointing part about the Merchant Marines, they weren't officially classified as veterans until later part of the 70s, I think it was, when he could start collecting other benefits.
I believe early spring of 1971 is when the word came down to command about the 83rd.
Oh, 83rd, yeah. 71, that's when they decided to declassify. They as well went declassification to Florida as a fighter NSF squadron. As far as I can tell right now, they're still active. I did run into a former squad mate who married one of my wife's cousins. He lives in Kentucky. And he said he found a group that were members of the 27th. I haven't found them yet, but there's evidence from they can go there. But that's what happened, that both of our squadrons were reclassified to become further assignments as fighter squadrons instead of interceptor squadrons.
Back in 71, one of the bigger issues were the protests against.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I was actually a civilian driving back home, and before that, when I came down on leave, wearing a uniform was really a problem. When I got down there, there was just so much hatred towards the troops, Vietnam, because they didn't understand. We didn't dare wear our uniforms, and I think most of my younger siblings kind of went through my things and took off with all my uniform stuff. But hey, Mom, she hung in there and kept a few things for me, like stripes and badges. This was made by a squadron's wife, this cup. I've had it for many, many years. It has both the 27th emblem on it, oldest and best, and my final rank, which then was Sergeant E4, which I enjoyed that.
Well, thank you very much. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Well, I just want to say one thing, that being a civilian was a little rough. It was a lot different. I kind of had a tested lead to why I got out, and if I should have stayed in, this kind of thing. I have met a lot of retired vets, a lot of Air Force vets, and Navy, Marines, and the like. And it was so educational for me. It was so maturing for me because I went in when I was 17. And they really give you an opportunity to grow, mature, be respectful of your elders,